My first question, how was your life being ambassador in Cambodia?
Well, my life in Cambodia has been not only enjoyable, but it's been a very hectic 4.5 years. I've been very privileged and fortunate to have been able to chaperone the bilateral account between Cambodia and Singapore to a high between 2018 to 2019, whether it's in terms of trade, FDI, capacity building, two-way tourism, or people-to-people exchanges. So I've been fortunate to have been able to execute the activities that we have planned, in part because of the strong support and cooperation from the Royal Government of Cambodia, the friendship that we have established with other members of the community here, from the business sector, the think tanks, the academia, as well as the diplomatic corps. So all in all, the 4.5 years I've been very busy, but looking back, I'm also happy that it's been very fulfilling and satisfying. I'll be most happy about is the fact that we have established stronger bonds of friendship between the two governments, between the two peoples, because I've always believed that the cornerstone of any enduring bilateral relation must be people-to-people ties. Or to put it another way, my personal conviction has always been that the state of bilateral relation between two countries can only be as strong as the bonds of friendship between their two peoples. And that was one of the main objectives when I started off my mandate. So a lot of activities were actually geared towards creating more channels of communication, not just between the governments or organizations and institutions, but between the two peoples as well. And I think by and large, I've been successful in that regard, and that's what I think I'm most happy about.
You have a good initiative about the street art fest. That is very interesting for people-to-people culture and culture. Can you describe about that? How is that a success, or how does that work?
It took more than a year just to conceptualize and be able to operationalize that concept of the street art festival into what it is today. We started off, or I started off with this concept whereby we will have one long stretch of wall for two artists, one from Singapore, one from Cambodia, to jointly collaborate on. And then we have one small segment for community participation. It was supposed to be just a 2 to 3 day sort of activity, but as we got into the implementation stage, it evolved into something that was much bigger. From a single stretch of wall, it became 11 wall-sized murals that were portable. From 2 to 3 day activity, it became a 2-week-long festival. And now when you look at it, it's actually a whole year-long festival, right? So a lot of things actually evolved. The conceptualization part took a bit more time because I was looking around for believers in this concept. I didn't want just another activity to commemorate the 55th anniversary year of diplomatic relations. I wanted it to be something that is all-encompassing, something that was easily accessible to members of the public, but at the same time, something that had meaning, not just another activity. So to provide meaning to it, we looked at the charitable angle. We got on board two beneficiary organizations, the Cambodian Children's Fund and the Cambodian Living Arts. So I think you will know that at the end of that whole festival, we managed to raise $70,000 for the two beneficiary organizations. And that was despite the COVID-19 challenges this year. So that promotion of arts and culture was only a conduit. It was only a platform. But essentially, it's to actually showcase the fact that there are more common interests, more commonalities between Cambodians and Singaporeans than there are differences. On the surface, you may see that we are very different, but when you look deeper, there are so many points of connection, so many interconnectedness between the two peoples, the two governments, the two histories. Street food, for example, is a common passion between Cambodians and Singaporeans, and you'll be surprised at the similarities in the taste, in some of the desserts even, and even some of the more exotic delicacies, which I think non-Southeast Asians may balk at. For example, frog soup and so on, right? So turtle soup. So all these are very common, but that's only in the area of food. If you look at building structures, you look at the history, they are all there are many overlapping areas.
I see. Okay. So actually, who actually bought the 11th painting?
Okay, so this whole exercise was also highly symbolic. Everything that we did, we wanted to have a Singapore and Cambodian component to symbolize the close connectedness and the partnership.
Right.
So I'm very glad that for the 11 murals, they were all purchased by Cambodian and Singaporean businesses. So it was a good mix. Some of the businesses that purchased them decided to re-gift it to the embassy, and the embassy helped then to look for a host for the murals to be installed so that it can continue to be enjoyed by members of the public. So recently, for example, we installed 2 in Siem Reap. Unfortunately, we could not have a physical unveiling ceremony, so we decided to do it remotely. Those 2 murals, one was purchased by Philip Bank, another one was purchased by OV Investment. It depicts, again, the food scenes as well as the common tourism aspects of both countries, which what I thought were very well suited for them to be installed in Siem Reap.
Right. National Bank Cambodia have one piece which is quite interesting with the drawing with the elephant and the young boys throwing something.
That's at the Sosoro Museum. Actually, for NBC, they hosted 2. One is at the auditorium in Kampong Cham. The other one is at the Sosoro Museum. So for the Sosoro Museum, for that piece, it was a merging of a 5,000 or 50,000 note, real, Khmer real note, and a $5 Singapore dollar. So plus together is 55. So when you look at if you take the 2 notes out and you compare them, you will understand how the artist tried to depict them. Well, I would say there were some fees involved, but it was at the friendship price.
Okay. That's very good. Move to another project which is very interesting for both Singapore and Cambodia as well, which is Infrastructure Asia. Can you talk more about that?
Infrastructure Asia is a relatively new government agency that was set up in October 2018. Its main value proposition was to bring together Singapore's knowledge and experience in infrastructure solutions, in terms of international solution for infrastructure needs, as well as financing options, because Singapore is a natural finance hub. When it was launched in October 2018, I made a trip back in January 2019 to basically speak to the executive director to apprise the team about the value proposition of Cambodia. And Cambodia obviously is still in need of infrastructure development. And at that time, I personally believe that Infrastructure Asia would be a good plug-in for Cambodia's infrastructure needs. So in 2019, they made no fewer than 8 trips to better understand the situation, circumstances, and the challenges. So in their conversations with the Royal Government of Cambodia, they realized that wastewater treatment or wastewater management, for example, is one of the top priorities of the government. Logistics was another aspirational goal in Cambodia's Industrial Development Plan 2015 to 2025. And that was something that appeared to be quite elusive, but Infrastructure Asia found that part of the project to be quite interesting as well. So in total right now, there are, broadly speaking, not specifically, but broadly speaking, there are 3 areas Infrastructure Asia will be involved or is currently involved in. Wastewater management investment strategy, waste to energy, and in terms of logistics and supply chain. So the last one is something which I'm very excited about because it's being translated into the Phnom Penh Logistics Complex. There was a virtual conference a couple of months ago where the ministers from Cambodia and Singapore, they had a virtual meeting to give their endorsement to this project. In fact, Deputy Prime Minister Onpon Monirot had also issued a letter appointing Infrastructure Asia and a Singapore consortium, YCH, to be the private
sector partners to bring Phnom Penh logistic complex into fruition. Right. So if those the two things have the complete, what could be the way to attract more Singaporean investor? Well, if Phnom Penh logistic complex were to be implemented, in fact, right now they are at they progress very fast. They are right now at the stage of signing the framework agreement. Once that is signed, it will then be in a way to jumpstart the entire project. That project will open the doors to international MNCs and Singaporean companies to be more invested into Cambodia. But the immediate effect would be a boost in investor confidence. The longer term project would, of course, see greater numbers of jobs being created. So it goes into creation of employment, skills transfer, because the academy will be set up to, the academy will be focusing on supply chain and logistics. So it will help to train Cambodians, professionals, executives, and even technicians to upgrade their skills. But on the whole, the logistic complex would cut down on the logistic costs and time that it currently takes to transfer goods from the different borders, as well as to the port and the airports. Yeah. I also think something should be celebrated in your term, which is the number that I've seen, that $4.2 billion into 2019 of the bilateral trade, and about $3 billion just 8 months in 2020. You expect beyond that, how do you expect for more coming years? Is it going to be growth, tourism grows, or investment grow, FDIs, or I mean, if you left, things still maintain, things still continue, right? No one is indispensable. What I've done is basically just a small part of the entire process, and I hope that what I've set in place will be enough of a foundation for my successor to continue to build on it. The next ambassador coming in, of course, will want to see success and growth in the bilateral account as well. But to be honest, when I started off my mandate here, it was not with any fixed target in mind, whether it's regards to trade, investment, capacity building, or tourism figures. Because these are not issues that are within our direct control. I would look at them as symptomatic outcomes, good outcomes if bilateral relations are strong. In fact, the 2 or 3 key indicators of the state of health of a bilateral relation must always be trade, investment, and possibly capacity building. These are 3 automatic symptomatic outcomes. But there's a limit to where trade and investment can go, how much they can grow, because they are also subject to many factors and circumstances outside the embassy's control. So what I set out to do instead was to lay the foundation. As I mentioned earlier, I've always believed that the cornerstone of any enduring bilateral relation must be people-to-people ties. So once you take care of the cornerstone, once you take care of the foundation, or add on and make sure the foundation is strong, then all the other indicators will take care of it on their own, because the favorable condition has been created. And in building the foundation of, adding to the foundation of friendship, it means that what I did was to create multiple channels of communication, improve the mutual understanding for mutual benefit and for mutual growth. And I think that was exactly what happened. Once the environment has been taken care of, the rest of it, it can be trade, it can be projects, it can be infrastructure, it will automatically come into play. But if there's a lack of understanding, if there's a lack of that bridge, then it will be very difficult for even projects to even go into the discussion stage. Besides the celebrating your success, the thing that you have done, you may also face some issue or maybe challenges in doing business in Cambodia. I mean, in terms of the Singaporean community, business community in Cambodia. Can you highlight a few things? What kind of challenges that they face? Well, I'm not a business person, so what I can only relate to is what some of them may share. But again, when I hear from my businessmen here, feedback from businessmen, a lot of times you also have to take it with a pinch of salt, because they will probably be talking about challenges and issues that they find difficulty in overcoming. But is that the fact on the ground? It's a bit difficult to say. It all depends on the perception.
maybe just to deviate a bit, the key issue is about perception. Over the 4.5 years that I've been here, I've received, I think, literally hundreds of businessmen, including delegations and such. Right. And without fail, I'm always surprised when they tell me how astounded and amazed they are by the development in Phnom Penh. But when I check further, I realized that many of them have not visited Phnom Penh before, right, or their last trip to Cambodia was like years ago. And most of them drew reference from their impression or perception, right, of their experience in Siem Reap, or from images, information they can Google online. Right. So it shows that there's a disparity between their perception, their preconception, and what, right, they see on the ground. That in itself becomes the main obstacle that they have to overcome. In terms of the specific technicalities of difficulties in doing business here, I think every country would have the same sort of issues and challenges, right, as well. But then again, if the businessmen will be honest, right, some of them would cheekily say that the more challenges there are, the better for them, because they are the ones who will know how to navigate and be, right, nimble. If it's too transparent and too strict, a lot of them may not be able to find the business opportunities. Right. Yeah.
The high risk, the high benefit, right? Okay. What about tourism? How do you deal with the tourism sector here? Because now COVID-19, airlines have closed, those kind of stuff. But I see the number Singaporean visit Cambodia have increased. How come that?
Well, I would like to think that before COVID, when two-way tourism traffic increased, is primarily because of two fundamental factors. Right. From Cambodia to Singapore, the number of visitors doubled between 2016 to 2019. Right. I think it's because of the good work of the royal government of Cambodia in terms of the wealth distribution, in terms of the economic growth. Annually before COVID, it was 7% or slightly more. And that, I think, has translated into the affordability, into the ability of the ordinary Cambodians to be able to travel more. The second fundamental factor that I would attribute to, especially for more Singaporeans coming up to Cambodia, is that there is beginning to be a change or an update in the perception. Right. I'm not sure if you were to track the number of arrivals from other countries. If there's a noticeable increase, it could also be that some of the publicity about Cambodia, right, may have worked in the sense that they are updating their perception. And I think ultimately that's very important, because if visitors have a wrong impression or perception about a particular country, it may dissuade them from traveling. Right. So it's important to get the right message out there.
So the message from Cambodia to Singapore have to go through accurate information or professional media, right?
Well, in the digital world today, there is no just one conduit. Everyone has a part to play. You know, I'm reminded of this wise man saying in the 12th century, if I recall correctly. He said that, you know, do not consider it proof just because it is written in books, because the liar who will deceive with his tongue will not hesitate to do the same with his pen. And that's in the 12th century when there are books. In today's world of digital technology, information is at our fingertips. Right. We receive information as quickly, as rapidly as we upload them. Right. Whether it's a view, a comment, a picture, a report, a publication. Right. So how do you differentiate what is true, what is a personal opinion, what is a fabrication, what are facts?
Check proof.
Right? Very difficult too. So, and there's another saying. They say that truth does not become more true by virtue of the fact that the entire world agrees with it, right, nor less so, even if the whole world disagrees with it. So what it means is that you cannot just follow the established or prevalent view. Right. It's important to do your own fact check. So when it comes to presenting positive publicity, it must still be grounded on facts. Because even if you over-project positively, let's say, for example, a particular country, you want to over-project about the stretch of beach that is the best in the world, is very clean and so on. But when the visitors come and they realize that this stretch of beach actually is very dirty, whereas only this small little stretch that's beautiful, right, pristine, the rest of it is a junkyard and so on, what will happen? they will start posting about it. They will start commenting about it. Word gets around, the image is damaged forever. When you try to recover, to then say that, oh, it was an aberration, few people will be, or you take time because perception is already formed, right? So likewise, if there's a negative perception or a wrong perception about a country, an organization, or an issue, it also takes time to be able to rehabilitate that perception. But still, it's very important to.
So what the most the Singaporean people views about the Cambodian methods, about Cambodia, you know, good or bad, or good place to go, or good place to come, or good place to invest?
I don't have a poll on that, but to be honest, I think if you look at Southeast Asia itself, right, there was a poll that was done by the ASEAN Secretariat, I think a couple of years ago, and I think it revealed that Southeast Asians are not very informed about the ASEAN member states in Southeast Asia, the countries in the Southeast Asia. And so there was this motivation, there was this drive to do more, to promote Southeast Asia amongst the people, to help them better understand. Because at the end of the day, we are plugged in Asia, more specifically Southeast Asia. So for small countries, especially like Cambodia and Singapore, Southeast Asia must be our hinterland. It must be the first place that we look to if we want to increase our trade, our investment, our people-to-people exchanges, and tourism, right? You look at the value proposition of Southeast Asia, it's very attractive and it's set to continue to grow. So how do we then promote a better understanding? It's about perception. So when you look back on the activities that the embassy has done, the Street Art Festival, it was actually one conduit, one platform whereby we tried to promote a better understanding about Cambodia, that there are more similarities than there are differences. But, you know, another objective of that Street Art Festival, right, it was to actually position it as a possible international art festival. If not for COVID, right, I think we could have succeeded. Because in the middle of that 2-week art festival, we had corporate sponsors coming to the organizing committee and asking them when the next one will be. One of them reportedly was willing to commit $250,000 to finance the next edition. And the organizing committee was really thinking about the next edition, which was supposed to be a digital art form, right? And from the embassy side, okay, although I conceptualized the Street Art Festival, I couldn't implement it on my own. So what I did was when I volunteered some Singaporeans to come on board, I gave them this promise: if this is successful, you own the intellectual property rights. And so for the second and subsequent edition, you should try to commercialize it, but hopefully you can keep the meaningful parts intact, such as contributing to a beneficiary organization and such. So hopefully we will see a second and subsequent edition of the Street Art Festival coming back. Maybe this time around we'll be in collaboration with another country. Because if you realize the first edition, we actually qualify as a Khmer plus Singapore edition. So next one could be Khmer plus Malaysia edition, for example, because Malacca, they have a very lively and thriving street art scene.
Right. What was the impression of the young Cambodian?
Well, actually we have many pictures of young Cambodians, especially the young toddlers and children. They related so much to it that they actually thought that it was alive, you know. Some you could see that they were touching the mural or trying to interact with the characters in the mural. And it was actually very endearing. It was very heartwarming to see the innocence. And actually that's what the artists also wanted. They wanted the art to be relatable. One of the reasons why Fonky, the Cambodian-Canadian artist, and Yip Yu Chong, the Singaporean artist, agreed to come together to do this project because they liked the community participation angle. When we told them that we are going to open a stretch of the wall originally for community participation, they were so thrilled. Then I said it developed into 11 murals, right? Then you have community wall pieces and so on. First of all, I think I need to congratulate the Royal Government of Cambodia for the tremendous job it's done in containing and managing the COVID-19 situation here. Myself and my other colleagues in the embassy and the diplomatic corps, we're all very thankful and fortunate that we're in Cambodia because things are definitely under control. In Singapore's case, although the numbers look alarming, actually a few months ago the situation was really well under control because the majority of the number of positive cases occurred within the foreign workers dormitory where it was already contained positive cases were already segregated from those who have not yet exhibited symptoms, and all the workers were taken care of just as well as just like any other Singaporeans in terms of medical care and attention. Right. So by and large, the number of cases were already under control. And in the past few months, especially the last few weeks, there have only been single digit or no cases of community transmission at all. All the other cases were all imported. Right. But the moment they arrived in Singapore, they were already under 14 days quarantine. So in that sense, the situation was well under control. Yesterday, my Prime Minister made a public address to the nation, and it was followed up by the interministerial task force, who gave more colour to what's going to happen in the coming weeks and months. So there are two pieces of good news. One is that Singapore is looking at reopening, Singapore is looking at entering into phase 3 of its reopening, which means the easing of social distancing restrictions as well as safe management measures. We still need to maintain vigilance, but there will be an easing of some of the restrictions, which also demonstrates that the situation is well under control and the authorities are confident that this is something that we ought to be doing. The second part of it, second good news is that the vaccine, our order for the first shipment of vaccines will arrive in Singapore sometime this month. And in the following few months in 2021, we expect that the rest of the shipments would arrive, and there will be enough vaccine for the entire Singapore population by the third quarter of 2021. So with that, as my Prime Minister has said, it is light at the end of the tunnel. And when more countries begin to vaccinate their population, it means that we can resume some form of normalcy. Right. Yeah. But as of the beginning of the COVID situation in Singapore, the immediate priorities was basically to, once the situation began to be stabilized, the priorities were to help businesses restart and recover safely, to create employment, job opportunities for Singaporeans to be gainfully employed. And the third one was to look at reopening the economy so that we can stay connected to the rest of the world. Right. Because all these are interconnected. Without being connected to the rest of the world, FDI businesses will not be able to thrive. Businesses, if they're not able to thrive, then there'll be fewer opportunities for employment. And then if you have higher unemployment rate, more difficult for the Singaporeans or long-term residents to take care of their families and so on. So there's a lot of knock-on effect. So it's sort of a synergistic objectives that we try to achieve.
You congratulate Cambodian government of doing good job, but somehow Cambodian government have not ordered any vaccine from anywhere yet. What sort of advice you might think about for Cambodian government?
Well, it's not my place to advise the Cambodian government on any policy matters, but we should not make light of the fact that they have indeed controlled the situation well. Right. They have managed the contact tracing. Some people, when you look at the November 3rd and November 28th incidents, there were some critics out there who said that the Cambodian government overreacted. But my fundamental question is, would you rather that the government overreact or under-respond? Right. And in this case, I think they did what was necessary. So each government will do what is necessary to contain the situation. Right. And the important thing is that the government, of course, is looking at the procurement of vaccine. I believe as we are speaking, the Prime Minister is making an announcement on the plans for the procurement of vaccine.
Right. Okay, very, very good. Now, actually, what kind of the lesson learned within over 4 years in Cambodia that you may bring to your next successor?
I've already reflected in my valedictory report. What's most important is the bonds of friendship. As I already mentioned earlier, the rest of it are symptomatic outcomes, and a lot of them you have no control over. You may think you have a control, but ultimately, if you have your friendships, the lines of communication well established, then the rest of the topical issues will be able to take care of their own.
I have two more little questions. If you can answer, shouldn't be a problem. But in May, the Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong have mentioned about the Vietnam's invasion Cambodia in 1979, which has made the Cambodian government unhappy. What is your personal stand on that?
Well, my personal stand will continue to be my personal views. I think everyone will have a different interpretation of history, different interpretation of developments. But the important thing is the outcome. You know, as I have mentioned to many of my interlocutors and friends, international relations is not very different from interpersonal relationship. It's just that there are more factors and actors at play. So between friends, between family members, from time to time, there will be disagreement. But the important thing is to look at the maturity of that relationship. If after any disagreement of views and such, the relationship is not only stronger after that, but you can continue to work on future projects and bigger projects, then that's ultimately a very good sign. And that's what we've seen, whether it's from the May incident or any other disagreements, we have managed to not only get through it, but we emerge stronger with a better understanding and better respect for each other's views.
Right, that would be good. But a couple of months ago, one of the high-ranking officials of Singapore stated and reported in the Asia Times, saying that the Cambodia and Laos should be kicked off from the ASEAN bloc. What is your point of view on that?
One point of clarification, right? It's not a high-ranking official because the person who made the remark is a retired diplomat. So it's not representative of the government whatsoever. My personal view actually is something which Samdech Prime Minister has also shared on different occasions, which is that during the discussion among ASEAN leaders when they were crafting the ASEAN Charter, I think one of the leaders at a point in time made the suggestion about voting on important issues pertaining to ASEAN, instead of going by consensus. And I think Samdech Prime Minister or perhaps some other leader made the very astute comment that if you were to vote, that would immediately divide ASEAN into the majority and the minority. Is that what we want? Obviously not, because ASEAN is an unusual compact, an unusual construct that is different from the European Union. ASEAN countries will not be able to come together if there's a supranational body or a way of governance that replicates that of a supranational body. So it can only be by consensus. And the principle of consensus allows each ASEAN member state to be to have an equal seat at the table, regardless of the size of the economy, regardless of the size of the military, the geography, or the population. And so that formula will continue to work. So it has to be by the principle of consensus that ASEAN member countries must continue to work together. And I think each ASEAN member country and the governments, they are well aware that at the end of the day, if they were to grow their own economy, they can only do so in partnership and in concert with the rest of ASEAN.
Right. Some said the ASEAN already divided between the old ASEAN and the new ASEAN. What is your point of view?
Well, if you look at the division, if it's old and new, it could probably be because of the perception. The perception is that because the older members of ASEAN have a longer time frame in terms of developing their economies, whereas the newer members of ASEAN probably have a shorter time frame to do so. But that's perception. So at the time, then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong proposed the initiative for ASEAN integration, which is supposed to help the newer members of ASEAN and the older members of ASEAN breach that development gap. In fact, the program under IAI is growing very strongly. We have the Cambodia-Singapore Cooperation Center here, which has trained about 15,000, or we have shared experiences with about 15,000 government officials from Cambodia, for example. And we have other centers in Vientiane, Yangon, as well as Hanoi as well. So this is part of bridging the development gap. But at the end of the day, you have to be careful about the perception. Whether you feed that perception or do we do something to counter that perception. And so if it's a misperception that is not helpful for the growth of ASEAN, then that is something that we need to address head on, rather than feed it and reinforce it.
Okay, thank you very much. We covered everything. That was so good. So, what is your next journey? Where's your next journey?
Yeah, on paper, my next journey is supposed to be back home, back to Singapore. Yeah, it's considered our extreme hardship post.
Okay, for the last few words for the Singaporean fella, either in Cambodia and Singapore, about your mission.
You mean for the Singaporean community here?
Right.
Well, the Singaporean community in Cambodia who have dealt with me, they will all know the common message that I've always been giving them, which is that so long as you are a guest in the host country, you must always do what is within your ability to give back to the host community, to find something meaningful, find a meaningful way to do so. So I'm very glad the Singapore community has partnered with the Singapore Embassy and has supported me in my activities. Whether it's the flood relief efforts in terms of the contribution to the Red Cross, whether it's to support the Street Art Festival. I'm thankful that the Singapore community has been fully on board, and I hope that you continue to find meaningful ways to give back to Cambodia as you reside here.
Thank you very much, Excellency Michael Tan, for sharing your wisdom in your terms here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.